Pearl. What a wonderful, wonderful morning we've had so far. And a powerful affirmation. I mean, that's a powerful affirmation. I hope this is one of your keepers. I know that we do affirmation every Sunday, and some of you are like, yeah, that's for me, that's for me. That is one for everyone. I mean, you should just pocket that and have that posted somewhere. That is a powerful affirmation. So welcome to Real Life. You know, I'm going to invite you once again, those of you who are on the line, just maybe because I just need your energy. I need all of that with me. What a week we've had. And we have extended so much energy, be it those of us who were actually on the protest lines or praying during this time or sending those good energies of light and love to those who were out there. And then we also still have those who are dealing with COVID-19 and I mean like literally dealing with it, whether it's with themselves or with family or friends. And so there's so much going on. So I want to take an empowerment moment right now, because when we join our energy together, what I can give myself in the essence of God that I am multiplies when I connect with your divine expression. And so I'm just going to ask you, and this just maybe about a minute, we're going to take our phones off mute. Yes, it's going to be noisy, and that's fine. And if you want to put your video on, but I want us to just kind of see each other and feel each other in this moment. And just in this moment, we just want to just say, I have your back. I am with you. So just those refrains, just if we could just begin to just say that to one another. I have your back. I am with you. So
I have your back.
I have your back.
I'm with you.
I got your back.
I have your back.
I got your back.
I am with
All
you.
your back.
Your back.
And I am with you.
Got your back.
Got your back.
Your back.
Got y'all's back.
Have your back.
Definitely got your back.
I have your back. I am with you.
Yeah.
See you.
I've got your back.
I have your back. I am with you.
Got your back.
It's wonderful.
I believe that. Yes.
Wonderful. And for those of you who I don't know who are guests on the Real Life call, gathering call today, I've got your back. And I'm with you. And the fact that we are connected by this amazing source of everything, no matter how much our world may want to tell us that we are divided and we are separated from each other, that's not the truth. That's really not the truth. The truth is we all came from one source and we are connected. And so our work is to move out and dig out those things, those systematic ideas, those institutionalized systems, those ideas that tell us something contradictory, to move them, unearth them, and really be to each other that sense of sisterhood and brotherhood that we truly are. So thank you so much for that. I am going to give you on call just a moment, if you would check your phones, because I am hearing some background noise. Listen, we're streaming live right now on Facebook, and this call is also being recorded. So as a matter of privacy, I'm letting you know this. So please, I'm going to ask you to check your phones. Make sure they are muted. I know sometimes we think we mute them, but they're not really muted. So just if you would check them for me. For those of you who are on the call from the beginning, we heard our Associate Pastor Vanessa just share so profoundly about what's going on in this moment, and her call to action, that it awakened or reawakened something within her. And she said she had been kind of lulled to a place of passivity when it comes to engaging her greatness in this moment and what she has to contribute, and that she refused to shy away from that any longer. And she went through a ceremonial process of just releasing anything that hindered her from being fully present and showing up fully in this moment, because we are really truly living in such a time as this. This is our moment in history. When we hear about some of the great struggles in history, especially for us who are African Americans, Black people, and we hear about those struggles in history. We hear about the Civil Rights Movement. We hear about the Voting Rights Act. We've seen the images of the march in Selma. I mean, we see it and we're like, oh my God, what was it? How was it to be alive during those times? And I'm only naming a few moments in history. But I tell you, you have our children and our children's children and their children will be saying, wow, how was it to be in that moment? And so we are living in such a time as this. And so in whatever way you get to show up and contribute, listen, honestly, the sidelines cannot be for you in this moment. Whatever that might mean for you, even if you might be a little pessimistic, or you don't really know if anything of substance is gonna happen, whatever. But you cannot be on the sidelines. You got to check in with yourself and say, how do I contribute in this moment? Because it is such a profound moment in our history. It really is one of those, such a time as this. So be very conscious about how you can contribute. You don't have to contribute like anybody else, but find your path of contribution and make it. Okay, so that's all I really have to say about that right now. Oh, I love it. Someone just commented, the sidelines cannot, and they are not for me. So that is awesome. So let's turn our attention to our life study for today. And I do want to, as I usually do when I begin a teaching, give a little caveat that what I present to you today, I believe it's rich and full of truth, and it's full of principles, and that it can change your life if you embrace it. The decision is yours. I'm not the voice of authority in your life. You are. And so whatever you hear today, you get to decide, how is this beneficial for me? What part of this aligns and harmonizes with who I am? And you get to decide, what you want to take in and really kind of take root in your life and apply in your lived experience. So that's what I offer you today. With that being said, today we begin a 3-part series entitled Authenticity Works. In fact, you can don't take your phones off mute, but you can just say that to yourself. Authenticity works. And I am pleased that joining me this month and presenting part 2 next Sunday will be one of real life's very gifted leaders, Reverend Rochelle Durant. I'm so excited that she's joining me in this 3-part series. She is truly a walking treasure chest of wisdom and spiritual insight. So I am delighted that she will be sharing during this series. So you'll get to hear Reverend Rochelle next month. Today, I begin with part 1 of this series, Authenticity Works, and it's entitled, It Pays to Be You. It pays to be you. The name of our spiritual community itself, Real Life, speaks to what we believe to be a central and leading tenet or principle to life's journey, and that is authenticity. The word real in the name Real Life really stands for an acronym: radically engaging, authentic living. Real life. So that real as an acronym, radically engaging, authentic living. And we say radically because it takes courage and risk to live authentically. And anyone on that path of authentic living understands that. And it takes courage and it takes risk. So you got to be radical. And even people might see you as radical, but that internal sense of courage and that risk taking to be you. You know, so much of what I learned in my spiritual upbringing revolved around an outside-in relationship with God, an outside-in relationship with God. I was always reaching for God. I told the story, I haven't told it in a while, but I was probably about 10 years old, and we were part of a very Pentecostal-esque type of Christian church. And we were in church a lot. We were in church during the week. We were in church in the morning on Sundays, in the night, in the evenings on Sundays. And so we were in church a lot. And when I say we were in church, it wasn't like an hour-long church or an hour and a half. I mean, morning service on a Sunday morning, it was probably about 3 hours. And then we would go home for lunch, you know, maybe play a little bit. And guess what? Right back to church in the evening around maybe 5 or 6 o'clock. And so one night we're in church, and listen, altar calls was a part of every single Sunday. You know, a call to repentance, a call to seek God, call for forgiveness, a call to even becoming saved, right? So those of you who grew up in that, you understand it. And, excuse me, and so I would always go up to the altar. I mean, I always felt a sense of, even 10 years old at that point, always feeling that sense of, oh, I'm not doing something right. I'm missing something. I'm missing the mark somewhere. I gotta get to the altar. So this one evening, I get to the altar, and it's a nice padded, you know, kneeling bench there. And so I'm there, and then at the top here where I place my elbows, and lay my chin, you know, it's a nice padded area as well. And so I'm there, I'm praying. And the next thing I know, someone is tapping my shoulder. That's what, and like, I'm kind of a little stunned, but my head is still down. It's kind of buried, you know, into the cushion there. And I kind of peeked out to the right, and there was no one else at the altar. And I peeked to the left, and there was no one at the altar. And I realized I was the only one. And there was like one of the mothers of the church, one of the ministers, she was tapping me like, you okay? And when I realized that, it was so instantaneous that it probably took about maybe 5-10 seconds for me to realize what was going on, which was I fell asleep at the altar. And of course, I couldn't let them know that I fell asleep at the altar. I was supposed to be there repenting, asking God to come to me, to help me, to heal me. And here I was asleep at the altar. And you know, the altar is like right in front of the pulpit. And so I couldn't let them know that. And even at 10 years old, I realized I couldn't tell the truth in that moment. What would they think of me? And so I started praying and pretending that I was crying. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Okay, I'm not proud of that moment, but I'm telling you what happened. And I am there crying, fake crying, of course. Like I have had a deep moment and I'm really not asleep. I was just so deeply engulfed with God. And as that cry became louder and louder, the whole congregation began to clap and praise like a child was having an experience with God. It was awful. I was awful. But these altar calls were part of calling God to us, and kind of reconciling that there's something missing and broken and not right with us, and we had to get God to come to us. So my whole spiritual upbringing revolved around, oh, and by the way, I never told them the truth. I mean, if any of them are listening today, they'll hear it. But So, but it was revolved around that outside in relationship with God. I was always reaching for God. And that didn't end when my quote unquote childhood ended. That followed me throughout my spiritual journey, because that's how I saw God. That's how I learned God. That's how I was taught God. And so I was always reaching for God. I was always asking God to come to me. I was always having to make sure that my doing met the standard that I was to live by. The doing. So doing is very prevalent. Actually, it's elevated to perhaps one of the highest levels of your spiritual journey in this outside in relationship with God. So I was always having to make sure my doing met the standard that I was to live by. It wasn't that I was shaping my life, rather my life was being shaped by what was external to me. However, as I began to question my unquestioning agreement to the relinquishing of my own authority, my own voice, my own beingness to these external entities, the standard, it led me on a path, this questioning led me on a path to authentic living. And 16 years later, I am more convinced than ever that authenticity works. That authenticity works. So what is meant by authenticity? Simply put, authenticity is knowing and being yourself. So it's not just knowing, but it's being what you know. So it's knowing and being yourself. And this kind of living, this authentic living shifts your relationship with yourself, and therefore it shifts your relationship with God. Instead of living from the outside in, you begin to live from the inside out. In other words, you are not calling God to you like I did for so many years in my spiritual journey. You are not calling God to you. You are expressing God from you. Now that's a big difference. That's a huge difference. You are not calling God to you. This is not an external relationship. It's an internal one. You are not calling God to you. You are expressing God from you. The Latin meaning of the word authentic is exactly that. Au, meaning out of or from, and then theo, meaning God. So authenticity literally speaks to living out of or from God. So to live one's life from the inside out means being true to one's personality, spirit, and character. Authenticity is knowing, right, yourself, and then being yourself. And that's why we use the word radical in that real acronym, because this is a radical concept, right? That you live from the inside out, from this knowing of who you are, and then being that. And that calls for being true to your personality, your spirit, and your character. And that is what makes the teaching about the flesh shared in Christendom and other faith traditions so antithetical to authenticity. because it separates you from yourself. It separates you from yourself by automatically labeling half of you as bad, by automatically labeling half of you as evil and cut off from your divine nature. The idea, the theology of the flesh literally says that there is a spirit part of you and there is a flesh part of you. There is through literally, and they use this idea of how we get stuff passed on to us genetically to attribute, like we may say, well, my father or my grandfather had diabetes, and therefore it's in my genetics, right? Or or any other kind of disease or illness that someone may have, and they have it sort of in their family history, in their family genetics. And so they kind of use that same idea to convey this transference then of an innate bad fleshly nature, that you have it, that you literally have it in you. And so there is then this war between the flesh, right? This innately evil, bad nature, and spirit, which is good, which is God, which should reign supreme in your life. And so I'm hearing someone's phone may be off mute, so please check your phone again. So then the idea of this flesh theology is antithetical to authenticity because it separates you from yourself by automatically labeling half of you as bad, evil, and cut off from your divine nature. So instead of the full embrace of self, you spend your energies fighting with yourself about yourself. I'm going to just let that sit for just a moment. You literally, by embracing, it's almost like a sort of a schizophrenia-esque type of understanding of yourself. Because even though you might say, yeah, I'm one person, but this dualism within yourself is very antithetical to authenticity. And you find yourself literally warring with yourself about yourself. You spend your energies fighting with yourself about yourself. This part of you, this bad part of you, this flesh part of you that you can't trust. I can't trust in my flesh. Oh, how many times have we heard this? And sometimes people may not use that word flesh. You're just, I can't really trust myself. I can't trust myself to make the right decisions. I can't trust myself to know what direction to take. Every time I trust myself, I end up in a mess. Every time I listen to myself, or I go out, right, on that side, which is me, that part of me, and it doesn't work out, I can't trust me. I can't trust me. Because if we believe that, if we believe that idea of this dualism within ourselves, and that we are come with this innately bad part of us, how can we trust ourselves? How can we? It doesn't lend itself to trust of self. So you're fighting with yourself about yourself. This bad part, this flesh part, you can't trust, right? This bad part that separates you from God. This bad part, the flesh, that is out to get you and will destroy you if you're not careful. So instead of seeking full expression of self, we spend a lot of time in deep suppression of self. If there's anything this idea of the flesh will do for you and how it's so antithetical to authenticity, to being true to one's personality, right? To being true to one's spirit and character, is how it causes one to enter into a life of deep suppression. So people, they suppress their thoughts, they suppress their feelings, they suppress their emotions. It's suppression of one's personality. And by personality, I'm defining that as your true to self actions. So it suppresses your personality, your true to self actions, actions you would take if you were being true to who you are. How many of you have been in a situation and you know what? That wasn't me. I suppressed my actions. I acted in another way. Because why? I was afraid of being ostracized. I was afraid of what people would think. Listen, every single time I do a real life teaching, every single time, there is this thought of, what would people say about that? Because I understand it challenges. It goes to the nucleus of ideas that we've been spoon-fed, that have been transmitted to us, and it challenges the validity of those ideas. And so whenever people feel challenged or threatened, they automatically want to then, kind of blow out your light. They want to then, and especially within faith traditions, call you heretic or rebellious. You all have probably heard those terms before. And so instead of seeking full expression as authenticity nurtures and fosters, we spend a lot of time in deep suppression of our personality, our true to self actions we would take if we were being true to who we really were, who we really are. And we do it in reflection, right? That really wasn't me. That's not how I wanted to be. But we don't want to be punished. We don't want to be ostracized. We don't want people to think a certain thought about us. We want to be included. We want to be liked. So there are all those things that are happening. And it's just like me on that altar. Oh my God, I could not let people know that I fell asleep at the altar. What would they think of me? Oh no, so I've got to do something else. When really I was tired, I was sleepy. I should have said, oh, I'm so tired. I'm 10 years old and it's been a long day and I just fell asleep at the altar. No way, I couldn't say that in my mind, right? Because that's how I was processing this idea of God in my mind, even at 10 years old. So instead of seeking full expression, we spend a lot of time in deep suppression. We suppress our personality, which is our true to self actions. We suppress our spirit, which represent the seed of our emotions. And that's why so many people, as Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote, spend so much of their time in quiet desperation. I remember one time I was at a huge conference. It probably had, I don't even know, 20,000 people. It was huge. And I'm not going to tell you who the speaker was. That speaker is still extremely prominent today. And the speaker had given a powerful message. And the room was filled with believers because during the time of praise and worship, these people were going for it. They were dancing, they were shouting. It wasn't like half the room was, quiet or, just kind of seeking or exploring. No, these people were engaged. And the speaker gave a call and said, how many of you have been wrestling with the idea of suicide? Now, I actually found that to be really refreshing to ask that question in that space. And it was amazing. And then he said, but you haven't told anyone. You've been keeping this secret. You've been keeping it silent. You haven't shared it. But I want you to know there was a powerful energy in the space. And the amount of people from that group that actually stood up to say, yes, I haven't. And what saddened me, I was happy to see that, but what saddened me is that, my God, just a moment ago, these people were shouting and praising and jumping, and they're living with this quiet desperation. They're literally thinking of taking their lives. And so it suppresses this idea of the flesh, this idea of this innate bad evil that separates you from you. It suppresses your spirit, the seat of your emotions. And then it also suppresses your character. Now, when I talk or speak about character, I'm not simply pointing to one's morality. I am pointing to the elements, the qualities that are distinctive to you. Distinctive to you, the attributes of your distinction. If we embrace this idea that somehow there's a part of us that's bad, that's always seeking to ruin us, to take control of us and not do what Spirit is asking us to do, that there is this thing inside of us, not just a thought or an idea, because sometimes, yeah, we're having a very a real life experience, and there are times when thoughts come to us, thoughts that don't align with who we are, and we got to deal with that. I'm not talking about that. That's part of evolution. It's part of transformation. I'm talking about actually believing and accepting that there's this part of you that is innately bad, this flesh that wars against your spirit. This concept is antithetical to authenticity, because authenticity speaks to a full embracing of yourself, being true to all of who you are, and taking that responsibility on to living that, to knowing it, and to being it. So this idea of the flesh, this theology of the flesh is antithetical to all of that. So when I speak of character, I'm not pointing to just your morality. I'm talking about the qualities that make you you, that make you the distinctive person that you are, because there is no one else like you. You house within yourself, within your body, within your personhood, qualities that no one else has, gifts and brilliance and divine magnificence that no one else on this planet, it is as distinct to you as your fingerprint. And to deny any part of you is to suppress full expression. And you've got to, I invite you to reject that idea, to reject that thinking. The flesh teaching automatically seeks to put a nature of badness, of ungodlikeness within you that separates you from yourself. And so you don't live from the inside out because you don't trust yourself, which is a great setup for you to seek external entities of trust. And that's why so many people seek outside of themselves for tell me what I should be doing, tell me what decision I should make, and then reliance on sacred books, on whatever your sacred text is. Give me the archetype for my life. Tell me the boundaries within which I need to live and live up to. And then these authority figures, whether they're coming from government, from the law enforcement, from the pulpits in sacred communities, wherever it's coming from, looking to those external authorities for trust, because we've been divided from ourselves and we don't trust ourselves. See, the idea of a fleshly nature silences your intuitiveness. That what my great mentor, and spiritual guru Vakara Smith calls your first up. When you encounter something and your first up tells you, no, this is it. This is what you should look for. And because we oh my God, I have this nature within me. I don't know if I can trust that. Now you may not know, that may not all be going on within you consciously, but that's what has been settled within your subconscious. So immediately you reject your first up. And if you don't automatically reject it, you begin to reason it away. Well, and well, your first up may be, oh, don't even look at that woman. Don't go there. Don't even look at that man. Not because of anything in terms of how we've learned about, being unequally yoked or any of that nonsense, but because that's not the person for you. That person is not going to help you get to where you need to go. That person doesn't align with who you are. And so, yeah, I know you may be feeling vulnerable right now, but that's not for you. And you know this. And yet you begin to reason it away. And that's not just in relationship, that's with almost everything in your life. And so the idea of a fleshly nature works against your sense of intuitiveness, your knowing, your first up that comes to you about any kind of decision that you have to make. You have to release the idea that you don't know. Release the idea that somehow you're not clear. It's believing in that idea that you can't be clear, you're not clear, that causes the confusion. You are clear. It's the work of silencing any idea that tells you that you're not, that you won't know it, and to trust that whatever decision that you make, it's going to work out for you. Sometimes you may not even see it in the moment, but then you can reflect a year later, 6 months later, 2 months later, and realize, oh, so that's why I had to do this. I didn't really see it at the time. It didn't materialize at the time. I was wondering if I made the right decision, but now I see it. And the more you learn to trust yourself, the more that first up becomes emboldened within you. So that fleshly nature, and I'm taking way too long today. Yes, it silences your intuitiveness. It diminishes your wholeness because of the predetermined separation, right, within yourself. So it's always like there's a divided self that's warring within each other. So it really works against a sense of wholeness. And it cripples the glory of your body. Isn't it amazing how much the idea of a fleshly nature seeks to control your body? I know within my spiritual tradition that I was raised in, marinated in, it certainly does. It certainly did, whether it was what I ate, what I drank, what I wore, who I had sex with, when I had sex with them. See, because the body is only seen as good when it meets the standard and archetype of those in power. And so when your body can reflect to those in power that you're fitting into the expectations and the archetype that they have for you, then your body is good. And so we see this now so much within what's happening for for social justice and equality, is people taking back the agency of their bodies because of how, especially, I'm talking about Black people, about how Black bodies have been defined, how they've been defined. When you label Black men as thugs, that's a definition of defining the Black body. So when you, when you see a Black man, it's automatically they're a thug. When you see a Black woman, she's a welfare queen. They're hypersexual. I mean, all these connotations around Black bodies. And so the work to take back the agency of your body is not just within those social, political structures, it's also within the church, or within communities of faith, because if your body is not reflective of a certain standard or archetype of how you should be living, and then it's you got to subject the body, right? You got to subject yourself. So they use the flesh and the body interchangeably, although the flesh, from a theological perspective, speaks to this innate, bad, ungodly nature, but it's lived out through your body. You know, the Pope before this one, I was trying to think of his name. It didn't come to me, and I didn't have time to look it up. But the Pope before Pope Francis, when every night, when he would say his prayers, a part of his penance was to literally whip himself. And so he had this particular kind of instrument that he used, and he would whip his back as a sign of penance, as a sign of punishing the body, as a sign of getting the body and the acts of the body, right, to align with spirit. It's a deep, deep-seated idea that has to be rejected in order for us to take full agency of our bodies and understand that our bodies become intertwined with who we are, and we fully embrace our spirituality, and we fully embrace our humanity, and we realize that we live this out. We live out and express, right, our God self through this body, which is part of our divine self. So releasing the idea of innate fleshly evil, you will bring yourself back together again. You will take back the power of your authority, your voice, your beingness, and the agency of your body. This enables you to experience the richness of being you, of being authentically you, because I'm telling you, it pays to be you. Authenticity works. It pays to be you. It solidifies your purpose. It nurtures your peace. It emboldens you in terms of your power. Authenticity works, and it pays to be you. There is no one else like you. I'm coming to a close. I know I've gone a little long today, but in his book, Ethics of Authenticity, Charles Taylor asserts that authenticity gives us freedom to remove the shackles of psychological, institutional, and familial pressures to conform. See, and that's what I was doing at that altar. I was conforming. And boy, did I learn that along my journey, how to conform. And I know I'm not the only one. Whether you grew up, this is not a phenomenon just for church, living outside of yourself, not living authentically. You don't have to grow up in any kind of spiritual tradition to live an authentic life, because all of society is built around this idea of conformity. And from the moment you exit your mother's womb, it's all about these systems that are already in place, informing you of who you have to be and who you are, and it's already setting up the parameters, how far you can go, what you can achieve, what's available to you. It's already scoping out for you the need for conformity if you want to be accepted. And so this is not something that's reserved for communities of faith, this or religious institutions. This is within all institutions. So he says that authenticity gives us freedom to remove those shackles, those psychological shackles, those institutional shackles, those familial shackles. So many people are struggling that within their own families. So freedom from these shackles is not a license to abuse, but becomes ground to assume responsibility for self without excuse. And that's the power. That's how it pays off for you. That's how it pays to be you, because you now assume full responsibility for yourself without excuse. You realize that you are indeed the captain of your own ship. You realize that everything that you need to live a full, expressive life that really expresses your beingness is already internal to you, and you can live that from the inside out. I believe that's what that encounter that the woman at the well had with Jesus. When she was hiding out, she came to get water at a time of the day. They had wells back then, and she brought her water pot. And she came to get water at a time of the day when all the other people in the town all the other women had already drawn water. Why? Because she had apparently made some choices in her life and developed a reputation in the city, and she didn't want to have to face those people. So she came when everyone else had been gone, at a time of the day when it was hot. It was so hot. It was really not conducive to drawing water. But she ended up in that space of struggle because she was hiding from herself. And so she encountered Jesus. And from a metaphysical perspective, that means that she encountered truth. And that truth spoke to her and said, hey, something is going on inside of you that is causing you there's a brokenness there that's causing you to seek something outside of you. Husbands, relationships, to seek something outside of you to fill an emptiness. However that emptiness got there, that's what's at work. And you've been seeking external sources for that. But I've come to tell you, there is real water inside of you. There's a river of life inside of you that can quench that thirst that you have, that can fill that emptiness inside of you. And you don't have to hide anymore. You don't have to struggle anymore if you fully just accept that truth about yourself. And that will then, that's being true to your personality, because then you're going to make decisions that align with who you really are. And that woman left the well. She left the well inspired about herself. Oh my God, yes. No matter how many years she lived a different kind of way, she came to a moment of revelation about who she was, and she was inspired. And then she became intentional. Why am I here? Oh my God, what have I been doing to myself? And I know she was intentional because the story tells us that she left the well and she left the pot. She left her water pot, the very thing that she thought she needed, right? Water that she was seeking, and realizing, hey, I've got that water. It's internal to me. So it's a symbolic message that she leaves the water pot at the well. So she's inspired, she's intentional, and then she's in harmony with herself, because she leaves there and she doesn't go home. No, she goes right to the very same town people she was hiding from, the women and the men. And she said, hey, I've come in contact with truth. And it has helped me to see something about who I am. And I realize I no longer have to hide. I no longer have to be ashamed of the path that I took that led me here, because I realized there were some things that I was working through, but it led me to a moment of truth about myself. And I've received it and I embrace it. And now I know that I'm free. And guess what? Even though you may think that you're better than me, I've come to tell you that you can be free too. That this freedom is for you. So release the facade. You don't have to pretend that everything's going right with you. You don't have to come to church clapping and praising, and yet you're considering suicide. That does not have to be the reality for you. So she was inspired. See, that's what authenticity would do. It pays. It enriches your life. There's richness. It pays to be you. You become inspired about yourself. You become intentional about your actions, and you begin to live in harmony with who you are. No more disconnect. No more schizophrenia-esque like living. You embrace the wholeness of yourself. So stop living from the outside in and begin living from the inside out. You are not calling God to you. You are expressing God from you, living out of God. You are living authentically when you are being true to your personality, your spirit, and character. And when you do, you will realize just how much it pays to be you. Yes, I'm talking about you. It pays to be you. There is richness in being you, being authentically you. Well, that's what I have to share. Listen, if we were in our physical gathering right now, I would have somebody put on a song because I'm feeling really good right now. See, there's something about authenticity that increases your happiness ratio. And I tell you, I would be shouting, I would be dancing, not because there's any expectations, but just something flowing out of me just naturally, a joy unspeakable. Listen, it pays to be you, because when you embrace this path for yourself, it gives you a joy that no one has. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about that joy unspeakable. No one gave it to you, and then no one can indeed take it away. It's yours. It's birthed out of this sense of contentment with your isness, with your cosmic being, with your illuminance that you embrace. There is no rejection of any part of you, and there's no acceptance that any part of you is innately evil or bad, but you're seeking rather to live up to the full potential of your divinity expressed through your humanity. That is what awaits you on this path of authenticity. Amen. And someone just put in the box, your joy is yours. Yes, it is. It is exactly that. It is yours. God bless you so much. I'm going to turn it back over to Pastor Vanessa, and we are going to get ready to close out. I tell you, I really wish I could dance. I'm going to have to dance after we get through this. But we are also, Pastor Vanessa, going to have a few moments of Real Life Extended for those who want to stay on the call afterwards.
Great, great, great. What an amazing teaching. I was just rocking back and forth. There were moments where I felt uncomfortable, and Spirit told me you need to be a little uncomfortable, because that's what we've been seeking for way too long, is to be able to fit in wherever we go, to be comfortable and not feel comfortable being our authentic self. If we truly are being our authentic self, we will be offending some people. And that's okay, because relationships can always be mended. You can always apologize, but never apologize for who we really are. Pastor, you just shared so many things.